And if I could comment, I think Chabon has provided somewhat of a facilitator role in facilitating the idea and the notion. We can't overstate Joel's involvement in this. He has taken this to the level that it is with the team. But Joel's very passionate about these trails projects, and it's a perfect fit for our strategy to have him working on those, in my view.
I can point out a really solid example of using the document that was created. And so we were in a meeting with the Forest Service discussing their potential project. And so I had in front of me a convenient printed out executive summary of the SEGs. And I was able to share that with the supervisor, the forest supervisor, and all this, boom, it was credibility, you know. And so he was able to quickly see where our community was headed, what we had decided on, and it made it really nice, right, for his team to join the trail party. And so right there was a really good example of having that tool to point to, hey, this is what we're doing. It wasn't just me, right? It was the community. And so the Forest Service responded to that and embraced the project in turn.
Very good.
One other maybe unintended benefit of the SEDS will be that, as the board knows, we're working with the Chamber and a whole bunch of other community folks on this America's Best Communities project. And I think that will be an important document to show that we're already have done a lot of planning with regards to where we want our community to go towards, and that may help us be more competitive in that process. There are some unintended benefits, I think.
You know, one additional thing, and I think, you know, it needs to be said so it can be reinforced. You know, I think Joel has been a dynamic part of the process, but I think we don't want to underestimate or devalue the other parties that are involved. I mean, if you're going to put together this All-American Best grant application that is being pursued by a joint group of folks, you know, if it wasn't for the fact that we had LEDC there and have had, that was an outgrowth of the Chamber of Commerce. It was kind of a committee wanting to try to get, you know, refocused everybody's attention. This is pre-SEDS, Audrey Taylor coming along with her mirror that everybody could look into and see what we're doing. But I think that they have played a vital role in terms of bringing to the table a wide variety of folks to have discussions, and they want to see something done. They want to see something positive take place instead of always the bickering that goes on. You know, if it wasn't for, you know, the SABA group, having, you know, an active group of folks, you know, out there, you know, utilizing and showing the value and benefit and bringing their friends from out of the area, you know, hey, come and ride our trails and check us out. I mean, it takes all these pieces and components to make what Joel does and what Stan does in terms of being the trail builders and out there mapping out the trails and so on. It takes everybody to do that. I mean, it takes the county bureaucracy, and they get a lot of bad raps, and rightly so. A lot of times they kind of deserve the raps they get, but a lot of times they do good things too, and I think that gives them an opportunity to shine because it is a good thing that they do, and they've been a part of it. You know, the city and the counties working together. I was really glad to hear Nick's version. I hadn't really thought about that, but you know, we always have had somewhat of a disconnect between the correctional community and the rest of the community. It's like us versus them. I mean, we've always had this dichotomy ever since the prisons arrived 50 years ago. But at the same time, this is something that allows us to unite all of our parts of our community into something that's like really positive and bring about positive energy. So those are the kind of things that kind of grow out of all these parties. So yes, thank you, Joe, but I think we need to thank all those other elements as well, because without them, none of this would really be possible. So that's the mission and the story that should be told. And I think Audrey has been the key, because she's the one that had the mirror and held it up, that we could all see that what we have is good, and that we're not always about dysfunction, we're about function.
Very good. Okay. I'm going to take public comment, I think. You wanted to make a comment?
I just wanted to make sure I second Mr. Chapman's motion.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Anyone else before we take action?
I did
Yeah, I think Paul already did that.
All righty. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Good. Thank you, guys. Okay, H2.
You turn the light off. Just think fire up first.
Just need this thing to turn back on.
Do your side. Something's happening. Here it is.
Probably has to cool
It's
down
coming up.
before it can reheat itself. Oh, there it comes.
Mel, could you flip that switch, please? Thank you very much.
This is my iron to actually.
Looks fine to me.
I got another mini strip. Yeah,
Very good. One of the near user.
There you go.
How do you get there?
That's legit.
All right.
There's a big one on the wall still.
It's just like
It's just like that.
Okay. So we wanted to bring before you a project that is working its way through the Lassen County Transportation Commission. And the project is vehicular wayfinding signs for the city of Susanville so far. And one question or idea we want to propose to you today is the potential to go countywide with it. And the reason I wanted to talk about Chabon right before this is because possibly one of the tangible products we could get from them is through the community branding process. Vehicular wayfinding signs, to me, seem like a product that spins out of a branding effort. If we're to think about who we are as a community that could come up with styles for things like wayfinding signs. That was just a thought that possibly they could help us produce, something in the ground like that. And so far, we've gone to the Lassen Economic Development Council with this. It was well received. I don't think we're going to find too many people in the community that wouldn't like a nicer looking sign, to help us to Susanville Ranch Park or Memorial Park or the courthouse and places like that. So I think it is a very pertinent, relevant project to talk about in the context of the SEDS and community branding. The Transportation Commission asked us to take this to City Council, to LEDC, to the board. Jared has already spoken to the City Council about it. Basically, the whole effort started a long time ago, really. We wanted one sign on Main Street to get people to Susanville Ranch Park, and then another sign on 139. And it ended up going through Caltrans, and we couldn't get the one or two signs we wanted, but then they recommended, hey, if you do a whole community-wide program, we could include those things in the overall effort. In other words, Main Street was maxed out, too cluttered up for their rules, and we had to find a better way to do this. So here we are, and shoot, I think we're up to 80-some signs altogether. It's a lot. It includes, I think, 43 directional signs, and then a whole bunch of destination signs, because you have to know you know, when you arrive, you want to see an indicator that you're there in that place. I've come up with several conceptual designs so far. Let's see if I can zoom this guy out. Here is, this actually, believe it or not, and this is just funny. This is Tim Allen, the actor. Standing there. But so here's one variation on what we could look like, and I've only done conceptual things at this point, and we expect the process to come up with more refined designs as we go. Here's the Diamond Mountains on this one. Jim indicated that he liked that. I certainly do. I grew up in the shadow of the Grand Tetons, and those mountains are etched in the back of my head forever. And every little western mountain town you go to, you know, there's a mountain range that kind of defines that place. And for us, the Diamond Mountains are our Tetons, is the way I look at it. And so it seemed pretty appropriate to put it there. Or if the community decides, we take it out. Here's a photo simulation of how it looks on Main Street. It kind of blends in with the colors of the buildings a little bit. And then in talking with Jared and Dan Newton with the City Public Works, they're thinking that gaslit posts, natural gas light posts with signage and possibly flowers would be it's a little bit more complicated design because you hook up to natural gas, so that adds cost. The flowers, you got to water them, of course, but nonetheless, it's certainly attractive, and we've all probably seen these in a community or two.
And Kim Yellow's got
And they're very nice.
Oh, that's not Tim.
And I think it works really well for Uptown. And this is twice now, Jim and I have talked about this, but I will bring it up here. It seems to me that it works for Uptown, but not necessarily out by Walmart and around here. But these are all subjective things that I expect to be fleshed out as we move on. Here's how that one looks. And then this is a little bit more, has sort of a Victorian look to it, historical sort of. And here's how it looks on Main Street. And as a county employee, I'm always looking at cost numbers. And, you know, I'm always, for whatever reason, I always want the numbers real low. I'm always, you know, aiming low. The number came out pretty high, but Jim seemed to think it was pretty low. But to do all of the signs for the city of Susanville, actually a pretty conservative estimate is $174,800. That's to do the whole town of Susanville.
What's the natural gas?
Yeah, so minus the infrastructure costs, like putting in the pipes, which the city would have to somehow come up with that money, but if it's just the post, you know, and the final product, I could estimate a primary sign like that is $2,100. That would be times 22 because there's 22 primary signs. I have to make sense of all this, to really find out how many signs we needed, where they needed to go, I did really the thing I always fall back on. I'm a map maker. I made a map. How am I going to do this? It's going to take 50 pages to write all this down. So I made a map. This is a map of Susanville, and there are yellow and red pins. The reds are destinations, and the yellows are where the signs need to go. And there's a legend here that describes that. Okay, so we have 48 proposed sign locations. I have them broken out in classes, you know, primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, so that you can kind of make sense of this a little bit. And then each pin has a little box that pops up when you click on it, Okay, so I've entered all this data into this map. And so when you click on one of these, it tells you, okay, it's a primary sign. And what are we trying to find? It's the railroad depot, the golf course, the pool, hopefully. Trailhead symbols are going to be on it, and also Hobo Camp is a destination there. And then it's coded also even further. And this sign, it's coded W, so the person is traveling, if you're traveling west, here's the information you're going to see. So I've already put a lot of work into this planning effort, and I don't think that a consultant would give us a map like this. If we were to use a consultant to do this, they probably would not take this extra step to do this. But for me, it's the only way I can wrap my head around this many signs, to keep track of it all. So this is available online, and we can send you the link if you want to explore it. But as we progressed over the last month or two, it certainly has occurred to us as county staff, with Aaron's feedback in the recent past, about why not do it for all the communities in the county. And so that's one thing I want you to consider today, is to not just do it for Susanville. It wouldn't be that big a project when you think about the scale and the size of our communities. It wouldn't be overly complicated. So I think we can do it. But I would, if we went county-wide, I see possibly a way to use Chabin for branding us, for some of this nuts and bolts work on community wayfinding signs for the whole county, all the communities. So I think that's all I have to say on this project at this point. I do have folks behind me that might have something to add.
Yeah, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for the work that you do this. It actually kind of started about 3 or 4 years ago. I was out riding my bicycle and I was coming off Paiute Lane on the skyline heading towards the casino area, and this big old window rolled up and waved me down as I was going the opposite direction. I mean, the poor guy was frustrated because he was looking for this big park that everybody was talking about. I had no idea how to get to Susanville Ranch Park. It was only a couple blocks away, so we were able to bring a guide in, and that kind of brought home the fact that we had no signage along the skyline coming off 139 indicating where this park was, and for that matter, there was no signage on Highway 139 or on Highway 36. And so that began my pestering everybody about we need to have a sign. And I brought it to the Transportation Commission, if you recall, I even brought it to the board. And I was just looking for one sign, let's get, county-owned park, you should be able to get there. And the fact it's now morphed into maybe some signs is this shows you how government is. But at the same time, I think, having some consistency and some branding of the community, and that's what I liked about the diamond. I mean, if you did the same thing in the Janeville area, if you Thompson Peak, if you did something, every community has, you have Dyer Mountain over in the Westwood area. I mean, Big Valley Mountain, is the main mountain up north and so forth. So you could use that as a means of creating some community identity. And I know Reading has a similar set of, that's when we got Caltrans involved. They were the ones that first brought up in the discussions that the transportation folks had, was the idea of using these wayfinding things. Jared had already been working with them, unbeknownst to all the rest of us at that point. And so it's kind of bringing together this divergent field of ideas. And I guess, to me, I think it has some merit. I mean, the fact that it costs $170-some thousand, I mean, that's a lot of money in my opinion. But in some respects, the way government costs for doing anything, I thought that was kind of a cheap figure. I know Joel was really concerned about sharing that number because he was afraid of the reaction he was going to get. So, my experience would teach me that to do these kind of things, we easily could be spending $400,000 or $500,000. So if you're only talking about $178,000, that's change in the pocket as far as I'm concerned from what I've seen. So But I think regardless of what the cost is, I think when you deal with $100 million every year, I think it's, some people it's a matter of perspective. For me personally, if I had to pay for it, it would be different. You wouldn't get it. But I think though, from a community perspective and from a much larger perspective, these are the kind of things that we're here about. This is what government's about, and we need to be able to define in a consistent way. We've had several meetings since then with the Caltrans folks, and in fact, we recently met with the sign guy for District 2 out of Caltrans, and we're working on some signage issues throughout the town, and some safety crossings and so forth. And he basically made it clear to the committee that met with him that that Susanville is the textbook of how not to sign your town. I mean, it was very clear. We are the poster child of how not to do it. And so this particular proposal that I know Joel has kind of refined and has been kind of in the works, is an opportunity for us to maybe clean that up and make it a little bit better, and more importantly, allow people to figure out, especially new people who are coming to town to live here, or people who are transient passing through town, how can they find the appropriate assets that we have? And you can turn Joel loose and do all that stuff with the mountain bike stuff. There's 120,000 mountain bikers. You get them all excited, and they get to the city limits of Susanville, and then they're lost because they see the sign button. And they can't figure out where they have to go from here. And I think that's what we have to look at, that bigger picture. So I'm kind of excited by it. I personally like the first of the three choices because the signs are easier to read. The kind of Victorian one, to me, I guess my eyes have gotten old as time has gone on, but I mean, that to me is a lot easier to read, and that's what you want to look at. And since we've been exposed to this over the last few months, I was recently down in the Reading area. I've actually noticed those signs down there, which before when I was in Reading I never noticed, but it shows you how you kind of pay attention when you start thinking about what is there. And it does make a big difference. So,
Any other comments? We should try and move, we give it the attention it deserves, but we need to keep it here for 11 o'clock. So, any comments? Firstly, so when it comes to the point where we would have to make a decision to yea or nay and spend the money, what budget unit will this type of expenditure take?
What you're doing today is receiving a report for a project, but initiated by the Transportation Commission.
That comes out of that fund.
Yeah, so not to say we may not visit the county budget if
I think some
comes
fundamental direction needs to be given. We want to just keep this focused as a localized thing that's in the Susanville area. It's something that we would be interested as a board to see maybe replicated throughout your county. Personally, I would be in favor of seeing us replicating it throughout the county and have each of the other communities get exposed to this and get involved, because each community is going to have your own perspective of what they'd like to see. Transportation funding by itself, I can tell you right now, probably isn't going to be able to fund this. But using something like Chabon, especially with her connection with this USDA gal, Dr. Hemston, a project like this here for $500,000 to do the county as a whole as an economic development tool combined with a transportation tool. Not that we would ask one or the other to pay 100%, but maybe as a partnership, as a percentage. That I think that there are some funding opportunities are there, because this would be very consistent with what Linda Hemston shared at that conference workshop that we attended here 2-3 years ago, where she was looking for how do you connect all the pieces together in terms of building the rural economy. So I think those are the things the staff really needs to be pursuing.
I think to go from today to the next step is just to put a plan together with, cost. Even an option of having the gas that ones in town, and maybe obviously,
Where's the city in on this?
Jared was working on this before Joel engaged this, so I think they are there.
They're ready to
I think they're willing, they're willing to be a part of this. They're going to have to be a big part of it, at least for the city part.
So, but I think we need to keep moving it forward like you've done. Congrats.
Yes.
Yeah, this first started the dialogue about the 2 signs about 3 years ago. We weren't able to put 2, and now we can do.
Well, if we keep talking about it, in about 5 years, it'll be 5
Yeah,
years.
so it's great. You've done a great job, and I'm just keen to see it move forward and come to where we can make an actual decision on it, and with some options, like, the cost, but obviously this sign's less money than the gaslit one, but have those options for the gaslit ones uptown, and then keep it moving, right? You have my support if you hurry up in a few weeks.
It might be appropriate for the board to express support for the idea to the Transportation Commission and direct staff to work
Can you
with
bring it
Transportation.
back as an agenda item we can actually act on to move that direction?
Can we give that now, though? Direction? So we say
Direction,
some time?
Directions.
So I would suggest that the board support the concept and direct staff to work with Transportation Commission to come back with a plan.
For countywide?
I think, yeah, both. So the board could vote, do we want to just citywide, countywide, what's the city's involvement going to be? Like all the ingredients to make a decision and actually get it going, make it a reality.
I'd like to see it countywide.
Well, I want to see some numbers.
Yeah. So let's bring it back with numbers, city only, county only, with some options to vote on.
Potential funding plan.
Okay, before we move off this, is there any public comment?
Yes, Iona McCain. Can we ask you to include a certain area?
Of course.
I mean, petroglyphs.
Oh.
Petroglyphs, okay? I had a lady come out to our ranch, and she had, what do you call it, the GPS and the iPhone, whatever it is. First time she's ever been out there. My God, she was clear up on Carlo Road, out toward Darrellwood, out in that area. She had passed us 9 miles. And she had that phone, that GPS, talking to her all the time.
So there'll be community outreach. There'll be, I hope, significant community outreach to come up with what they look like and things like that. And so I would encourage you to keep your fingers on the pulse of this as it progresses, and you'll see no typical notices in the usual places about meetings,
Okay.
things like
Okay.
that.
Quickly, any more, and we're going to move on. All right, thanks. So you have we have
adequate direction.
Okay, very good. So we're going to take up our 11 o'clock. I want to apologize to Chris.
No worries.
Running so late. Anyhow, welcome. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Chris O'Brien, acting board supervisor, to give us the update on the oversee.
Yeah, thanks. I won't take up a lot of your time. I appreciate the opportunity. I just wanted to give the board a heads up, and I did present this to the coordinating council last week in a little more detail. The forest will be conducting NEPA analysis on its over snow vehicle program. This is a snowmobile program. We have about 400 miles of green trails, so it's a significant portion of the forest is currently open to cross-country snowmobile use. So we will be doing a NEPA. We're doing it, there's 4 other forests that will be doing it as well: Plumas, Tahoe, Stanislaus, and El Dorado. This is as a result of a lawsuit, so we're actually being forced into doing this. Lassen's actually in pretty good shape. We were one of the few forests that actually have done previous NEPA, so we're actually in pretty good shape for this. I've been gathering information from a variety of groups: over snow vehicle users, non-motorized users, various organizations. We will be having a meeting, a public meeting next week. I think I told the coordinating council that I thought it was 5:30. It's actually 6:30. It'll be November 5th at the supervisor's office here in town. We are not in the NEPA stage yet. We are simply gathering information on the need for change. And I'll, right now, based on everybody that I've talked to, again, both motorized and non-motorized, Lassen's not seeing a need for change. There may be some things that we'll want to tweak around the edges, but at this point, we're probably going to go out with a proposed action that is pretty much the system as we know it today. So that's kind of where we're sitting. It doesn't mean that we won't get additional comments or things might change during the course.
Is it the intent to maintain the system we have?
Exactly. That would be the goal. Yeah. So,
Yeah, Chris, thanks. As you said, you gave us a good summary of the coordination meeting. It was good to hear that. And for the benefit of the media, could you just say the number of miles? It's quite extensive.
yeah, 400 miles, approximately 400.